Hello, I'm back. My name is Ted. I am working on what might be the most intentionally marketable game, or perhaps unintentionally marketable game ever. I am making a roguelike. Wait, no. I am making an endlessly replayable roguelike deck builder tower defense. Double deck builder, actually, because you're building a deck, literally, while adding these cards to your deck that determine what things you can build. But yes, it's endlessly replayable. It actually will be a roguelike because the neighbors don't like that you're building this deck, so they come after you. Is it a city builder? I don't know. Maybe it's a city builder. You could have like a city that you build on top of the deck. Is it a cooking game? Maybe, because if you think about it, oh, that didn't crash. If you think about it, there could be some kind of cooking elements as well. Like maybe it's a farming game too. So maybe what you have are these plots on here, and you can put a garden on top of your deck. You can grow vegetables. And then maybe you have a grill on your deck, and you can put the vegetables on the grill, and you could cook meals that give you health. And now it's a cooking game too. Think about it. So I can hit a ton of Steam Fests with all these concepts. But actually, what I'm working on right now is continuing to design this. I have, based on the discussions kind of towards the end of last week and what I showed you, I've now kind of I've separated out the essential building actions like post holes, joists, and deck panels. So I can always do these, right? No matter what. And that generally it feels really good to play this way. I like it. But then I've got these other ones here. These are more of the special building things. They cost more to do, but and they're also sort of the cards that you pull into your deck as you play. So most of this is coming through. I'm still not totally finished actually, because for a few reasons. One, there's just not that many of these different kinds of cards. So pretty soon, I'm just going to go through a big phase where I add just a crap ton of permutations of the turret concept and permutations of just the turret concept. So what I want are some different kind of qualities or characteristics. One of them would be turrets that have maybe a greater fire rate depending on the panel or the size of the panel that you put them on. There will be turrets that have a greater range depending on the size of the panel that you put them on. There will be turrets that so one dimension is there's a dimension of like the firepower of the turret, right? Like how much damage does it deal when it hits things? Okay, that's a dimension. Knockback, that's a dimension, right? So maybe there's a turret that has a projectile that has greater knockback, right? That's a dimension. Maybe there's a turret that has greater range, right? Greater just straight range. That's dimension. There's a number of different dimensions that can stack on each other, and that's kind of like the attack dimension, right? Then there's kind of the multiplier dimension, right? So in this case, like the multiplier will be based on different qualities and characteristics of the deck. This deck, not this deck. So one simple, obvious one is the size of the panel that it's sitting on. This is a 1x1, so that would be like the smallest possible multiple. But if I make like a really large panel like this, then that same building with that same multiplier would have a much bigger multiplier because it would be dependent on the size of the panel that it's sitting on, like the area, right? So that's one dimension. Another possible thing, another possible multiplier dimension might be just the straight width of the panel that it's on. So maybe like just if it's really wide, like we only count the width, right? We don't count the height into the multiplier. So that might be like an interesting thing to do it, because that would sort of give people an incentive to kind of just build like this, out and out and out and out and out, right? And now I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's like something where if you draw that card, now all of a sudden you're motivated to build your deck that way, right? Because that you get a bonus for doing that. So you're trying to think, how can I make like the widest panel, right? Similarly, another dimension, the tallest panel, right? How do I make the tallest panel? So a big panel right there, you know, just as tall as possible. That's how I get my bonus. So there's area, width, height. These are all what you could say, you could classify them as mathematical characteristics of the deck, right? These are just things which are true in a mathematical sense, right? These just like mathematical properties. So that's one. So those are three mathematical multiplier dimensions. And so when you're starting to think about the permutations of what kinds of cards can go in this deck here, right? I'm mixing these mathematical multipliers with the characteristics of the turret, right? So the turrets have firepower, they have range, they have fire speed. That's a characteristic. The projectiles themselves have knockback, right? Another potential characteristic is the size of the projectiles. So maybe there's something where if I put this turret on a wide area panel, then the size of its projectile is a multiplier of that wide area panel, right? And so then you just get this huge, like absurdly big fireball coming out of this turret, right? Because it's sitting on a very large panel, and that's like how that works. So what I'm hoping you see is when it comes to deciding what cards go in the deck, it's not some arbitrary thing. It's not just like, oh, that would be cool, that would be cool, that would be cool. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do a certain kind of game design, I guess, that's inspired by this talk that Jonathan Blow gave a long time ago, where I'm kind of just trying to observe the truth of the game that I'm making. Just observe the reality here. Observe the mathematical properties in many certain ways. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to like, what are the ways that I can build this patio deck, right? What are the allowable configurations? Okay, and then just notice that and say, that's a dimension along which I can grant a bonus, right? Because that's something I'm allowed to do. So you pay attention to all of those, and then you notice what are the qualities of tower defense games, right? What are the characteristics of placing turrets on a game board, right? Well, a turret, just kind of by nature of what it is, it stays in the same place. It shoots a thing at some rate. If it doesn't shoot a thing at a certain rate, it's not really a turret. You know, it's something else. And just based on that, and then the thing, when it hits an enemy, it does damage. Like those are the base rules. That's the, you know, if you sat down and you wrote down all of the rules of the game, right? There are guys. They come at the deck. They have health. They, when they're hit by a projectile, they move backwards. The projectile causes them to lose health. Just like write it all down, right? And then, and now those are that's kind of your base reality that you're working with, right? And so, the properties of this turret now, all of these rules, those become these sort of like mathematical permutations that you can use to kind of build up the vocabulary of cards that go in the game, right? Because we know there've got to be projectiles, because we know that they've got to hit stuff. We know that when it hits stuff, there's knockback. We know that that things lose health. We know that things have health. So these are all the different dimensions along which the card, like a card is really just a combination of a few different dimensions, right? So something like the multiplier dimension plus the firepower dimension yields card. So you can just come up with what's great about it is this is how you get to like thousands of different cards, like what you have in Balatro. You could get to that many cards because it really is just multiplying these things together, right? There's like thousands, there's all these different permutations, mathematically speaking, right? So I've got, a turret with I've got, the rate of fire times width of the panel that it's sitting on. That's a card. Rate of fire times the height of the panel that it's sitting on. That's a card. Rate of fire times the area of the panel that it's sitting on. That's a card. Rate of fire times the number of stone resources you have captured. That's a card, right? And so on, and so on, and so on. And so I think what kind of makes these roguelike deck builder games kind of interesting is people sort of feel like they're swimming in this permutation space. And that permutation space is what's interesting. I think that's what makes games like Noida really, really fun. Because you just never know. You don't know what kind of world they're going to generate. You don't know what kind of wands you're going to get, what kinds of different combinations of things you can put together in your wands. So all of that. Coming up with all of those things and then kind of just making a big, just mixing them all together in a pot and letting people fend for themselves. That to me is the essence of the roguelike deck builder genre. So that's what I'm really trying to get at. Hopefully that makes sense. So one of the next big pushes, once I've got the ability to not only do this, but to also like pay the cost, because you do have to pay the resource cost to put these different things down. I'm then going to just go on a big like card spree. I'm just going to make a crap ton of different cards, and they're all going to have all these different mathematical properties, all these different dimensions. I want to get up to maybe like 50 to 100 different cards at least, just for a game demo. And then maybe a few more resources that are required because there's going to be some like really powerful cards where they might require multiple resources. So get up to that many cards. And then I would say a few more enemies. And then that to me feels like a rich enough, playable enough game to make a demo out of. So that's where I want to get to. So let's, I guess we'll just kind of continue with development-wise where it's at. So I can place these. I don't have to pay the cost yet. These are actually just some default things that I put in the starting hand. I'm gonna swap these out. I'm eventually gonna make it so that you don't start with any of these. So you have to acquire the cards as you go. But that's later. So I'm gonna click on this. I'm just gonna build this thing just so you can see that like when you use these, it shows that there is a slot for it. And then I'm not entirely sure when all of the cards are going to get like replenished, but there's going to be some kind of thing that replenishes all of those building cards, right? Some event. Might be after every wave. That's a possibility, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So, yeah, now I'm going to like defend my deck. I've got this guy. Da, 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 da. Gets a lot easier when you have turrets. Turrets are great. They really are something. Okay, so you can see that I've changed my I've changed the choose a card screen. So this is kind of starts to build into your big deck. You know, these are all the cards that you have in there. At some point, this is also going to show you like how many of each you've got. There's a similar kind of like roguelike deck builder game, Peglin. I think that does a really, really good job of showing you all the stuff that's in your deck, your card deck. And actually, I think I'm gonna use a lot of these icons to kind of denote that. So that's kind of the plan. We'll see how all that works. But first thing, I just want to get the basic like UX right. This isn't quite right because the rectangle, the hover rectangle isn't quite right. So you need to change that. The skip button crashes for some reason, so I don't know what's going on there. So I just have to like fix a few things. Like I said, I generally don't like having bugs in my game. So let's fix the crash. Open up Remedy Debugger. Oh, actually can't. No, I do want to do Roguelike Deckbuilder. Okay. Okay. I'll play some stuff down because it's fun. Here we go. I just love how like all the bad guys are just like, it's kind of interesting. I do want to put some like different terrain. Okay, so we skip. Why do we skip? Oh, well, this is why we skip. Because this index is like up to 7. Yeah. I'm just going to make that 4 for now. Because actually I changed the amount of cards that are in your hand to 4. Because we have the essential building actions and that's different. So, where did that crash? Main, 259, okay. If I can get that to not happen. Okay. I actually think just a lot of this game is going to be like, there's going to be some drudge work in like translating all the different text on the cards is going to kind of suck. If I decide to go into production with this game. Did that work? No, that still crashes. Okay. Why does that crash? If I only have 4, if I don't build anything, what happens? Okay. So that needs to go up to the amount of cards that are currently in your deck, I guess. I'm not going to deal with that right now, actually. I'm going to like deal with a different thing. So I just want to make sure that that first rectangle that you pick is correct. So we're going to do that. At some place we get the size of the actual rectangle that you this is important. This is where we calculate all of those rectangles. But later on, building validation, click action, shoot the gun. Yeah, these are all the rectangles. Although, wait, where do I? Oh yeah, I set those up in the startup function. So we actually have all those. Oh. Well, in that case, this should be, no wait, it's a little bit different. Because I set those up. Maybe what I can do is like pre-calculate those for the pre-calculate them for the card selection screen, where these rectangles are going to go. Just the hover rectangles for that particular interaction. Probably, I mean, I almost certainly don't need to calculate that every frame. That seems unnecessary. So, because it's not changing. So I can do that. Yeah, let's just make something here. Because it's going to be similar. So we know a lot of these things actually. I can pull that out to function too. Pull that out here. Just saying that's the, I'm going to use this standard card width to come up with the different rectangles. And then figure out where they go. Actually, wait. Okay. Collapse deck rectangle. Card choice rectangles. Right, that's what we want. So rectangle 2 star card choice rectangles equals game state of the same name. So now we just gotta figure out what those are. And I think, where do we, no, that's not where we actually, this is where we actually figure out where those rectangles are. So I'm actually gonna like, I don't really want to be filling those in here. I actually want to be doing something else. And then we've got the skip button. The skip button is probably fine. So I've got, basically all I'm doing here is I'm like, when I get onto the card select screen, I have to I have to like calculate the rectangles that those cards are where they are on the screen, so that when your mouse goes over them, it can detect that you've hovered over them, right? So it can just do that logic. It's in a more it might be a little bit different from what you're used to seeing, because since I don't really do object-oriented programming, a lot of object-oriented programming people, they would have like a button class or something, and like the the card would be some kind of button class, and then there would be some kind of like, member function or whatever, where it detects that it's being hovered or something like that. And it would have kind of all of this state and all of this functionality sort of like mixed together. I don't really do that, so I do like more of a procedural style programming, like old school C, where I just kind of say, okay, well, what are the things that we got to do, right? We got to figure out some kind of rectangle that the mouse cursor has to be inside of that counts as hovering, right? And we've got to like put the cursor there, and then if that point is inside that rectangle, then you're hovering. And then I'm going to like store that state somewhere. In my case for this game, I actually just have a big old glob of state. It's just called game state. It's kind of a similar thing that Casey Muratori does. This is just, it's just like all the game's state is just in this giant struct. And to me, and basically that struct gets passed into the update function. To me, this is actually much easier to work with than a lot of object-oriented stuff, because all the data is there and it's very straightforward. And if I want to get something, I can just grab it. I don't have to like navigate this complicated object hierarchy in order to do that. And I don't have to like figure out, what object talks. It's more about the truth of the machine. There's just state in memory. And the game is really just a big state machine, if you really think about it. So if I want to get at some state, I can just grab it. And then, if I need to, there's times where I enforce boundaries between different kinds of states so things don't overwrite each other and all that. But for the most part, I found that this actually works really quite nicely. And it's, we're not really taught how to make programs this way, actually. I went to university, University of Colorado Boulder. There's a lot of good things about that computer science program, but even when I went, I still think things were more in an object-oriented tradition. So we never really got much experience just making like a straight-up, full-on procedural program like this. So it's like this style is almost a lost art in a lot of ways. But I'm rekindling it. So yeah, if you're not doing this in some kind of object-oriented way, how would you do it? What would you do instead of, say, having like a button class and member functions and all that stuff? You would at some point, like essentially you just have to boil it down to like, what are the things that have to happen, right? So just logically speaking, at some point, I have to calculate the rectangles on the screen that the mouse cursor is going to go into to figure out if it's hovering on the stuff, right? So I know that I have to do that at some point, right? There is a place where I have to do that. Now, what are my options for that place, right? There's a lot of different functions that get called in the course of running a video game. There's a lot of different places where that function could happen, right? Games classically have an update function, generally, and a render function. Not all of them do. Some of them mix the update and the render together as one function, right? So you could do it in the update or the render function or the update and render function. But then you're calling this logic to figure out what those rectangles are 60 times a second, right? Because that's basically what the game's got to do if you're running at 60 FPS, if you're running even faster. So if you call it then you're basically like eating into your very limited budget. Not significantly. It's not a significant amount that you're eating into that budget, but you're eating into that budget. You have this small budget of like 16.6 milliseconds. That's what you get for that function. You go over that, then you're going to drop frames. So what's another place? Well, I actually have a startup function that gets called at the start of the game. This is just as soon as the game starts, not even before we've like loaded assets or anything like that. And so to me, it makes the most sense to put this logic there because that's it only gets called once, so that's a huge bonus, right? I suppose what might suck about that, now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, actually this probably is not the best place to put this, to be honest, if I'm really smart about it. What kind of sucks about it is if somebody like were to change the yeah, actually this probably isn't a good place to put it. Now that I think about it. This isn't really a good place to put it because if people change the size of the window or they go from full screen to windowed, then that invalidates all these rectangles and they have to be recalculated. So I'm probably gonna, let's just do a to-do to move this. And I actually will move this into the game itself because I think that is correct. You're not going to notice much difference if you're not like totally resizing the window. And I also don't really like to allow people to people complain that like they can't resize the window in my games. And I'm like, well, why do you want to do that? I mean, the game is kind of meant to be played full screen, but that's kind of potato. Nevertheless, I still think all this stuff probably does need to move to like the update function. Just in case somebody changes the width of the screen. So that's a to-do. Not a big deal. But I am actually going to move this to the update function. And I'm going to change what yeah. So here, right? This is inside the update function. So I've got my card width. But yeah, to get to my other point though, generally, if you're not doing an object-oriented way, if you're doing it procedurally, you just have to break down like what's the stuff that's got to happen, right? So we got to calculate the rectangles, right? We got to figure out where the mouse position is, right? And then we got to do some calculation to figure out if the mouse position is inside of one of those rectangles, And then if the mouse position is in which of those rectangles, then we can figure out which of the rectangles it's inside of. And then when it comes to drawing those cards at the very end, we can say, oh, we note that earlier this mouse position was inside of this rectangle, so draw this differently. No objects required, really. We don't need some concept of an object that has like functions and state all mixed together. We just gotta, very, very simply just break it down. What's the stuff that's gotta happen? What's the order in which it's gotta happen? Now let's just go do the stuff, right? No modeling, no UML diagrams, none of that. What has to happen? What are we gonna, when are we gonna do it? And then you just do it. So that's really it. So now I'm actually figuring out where I want. Yeah, so this is. Oh, okay. Okay. So card size in pixels. I guess I can change that, the Y to standard card width, or the X to standard card width here. So I'm just figuring out how, and then the standard card height. So I just changed that up. Actually, this might do the thing that I want to do just by changing that one thing. Because now it's basically, the only real problem with this was that the card width was wrong. Card width and height were wrong. So now I'm already doing this calculation to figure out where all this stuff should go. So this itself might just work. So, okay. I'm gonna try this and see if it gets us what we want, which is just that the hovering works on that one screen. So not gonna do anything, I'm just gonna defend the deck as best I can. Thankfully, this first wave is pretty easy. I can like... This looks correct. You note that when and again, like I'm just doing some kind of some kind of like hovering interaction, right? I eventually want this to be, I want there to be some kind of other animation that's like much better than this, but when you're prototyping something, putting in all the details and all the animations and all that stuff really just, it kills your project because you're spending all this time on details that you're not even sure if you're going to use yet. You don't even know if you're going to have that in the game, or you might not be sure what kind of problems you're going to run into. But this looks good, so I'm gonna go with that. I still haven't figured out why the skip button is making this crash. So, yeah, and then I get thinking kind of, I've been playing a lot of roguelike deck builders, on the weekends. I was playing Peglin recently, and I was playing Peglin a little bit earlier when it first came out, so it would have been almost a year ago. And I've actually noticed a lot of the ways that they've iterated on that design and kind of improved it. What I like is that they added this like currency concept, like just like gold. And then you can spend gold after every encounter to buy, you can decide to buy cards or not, or balls rather. You can decide to heal yourself, right? So that's something you can spend the money on. So I guess what I'm saying is like, I'm not even sure of this design at all. So if I started doing all this animations and stuff for a design that I'm not really sure I want, that's waste, right? Because actually what I might end up with is something that's closer to what Peglin has, where maybe after every encounter, right, after every like defense phase, you get currency, and then you can use currency to purchase different cards, right? Or you can use currency to heal yourself, or there's a number of different sort of things you can imagine using the currency to do. But for now, I just wanted to have pick different options here. So this is starting to look better. That part works, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to commit that. Hover effect on card select screen. So that's good. Now I want to figure out what's up with that skip button problem. So I know kind of where that's. I'll deal with all these other to-dos later. I don't want to bore you with that. But yeah, man, procedural programming. It's kind of the hotness. Really just makes things so much simpler. There's it's boring, but the fact that it's boring is actually good. because you're acknowledging that the job of programming is often boring, and that the right thing to do is get the boring stuff done so you can get to the interesting stuff, which is the design part, right? The code shouldn't be interesting. Like, the code should not be interesting at all. The product you're working on should be interesting. You know, you should be fascinated with the product, not with the code. Okay, so I think this is crashing because I'm going all the way up to 4 for my hand. What am I doing here? Or if I skipped it. Deciding to add a new card. Adding a card to the deck. But I don't even have, oh, that's why that's crashing. Because I don't have I got to break down what this is doing. There's 2 parts to it. And I think what I'm kind of running into is, so here's the parts that work. The part that works is randomly generating, okay, I'll actually walk you through all of this. So there's a part where we randomly generate all of the, like the cards that go into the, here it is, right? So we have this thing called total card types in game. Okay, and so actually this right here, at some point, right, there's just going to be a big ass, like, just list of all the different card types, right? And to make it really simple, the permutations of cards are going to be their own card type. So I'm not going to do any like other fancy stuff. I'm just going to make a new card type for every permutation that I want in the game. Some of these permutations might just be so powerful that they have to be like modified, or I'm not really sure, but I'm going to have a lot of different permutations. And every single one of them is going to be a different card type. And I'm just going to stuff them into this big ass array. And then when we're randomly selecting different cards to pick, then it'll just pick from that array. So, you know, it could be anything that you get that you could add to your deck out of that huge list of stuff, right? So that's something to consider. So I'm picking from a random code. So I've got that part done, where I've just got a big list of random cards that you could pick from, picks them purely randomly, fills in those slots on the screen for the different cards. So those 3 cards that you saw, that's just picking at random from all the different cards that are in the game, right? And there's only 2 right now, because I just haven't really done much there. Next, so that part seems to be working fine. But what this is doing is it's going for 4 times. Look at the hand of cards. I only ever have four cards in my hand. And if there's no card there, then if this card hasn't already been used in the same shuffle, right? So I have actually introduced this concept of like the shuffle, which is kind of funny because if you only ever have like 4 cards, then a shuffle doesn't really mean much. But in that case, I guess you can think of it almost as like a rotation, right? And actually, this is sort of the thing. I think I was drawing inspiration from Peglin again, because kind of one of the things that Peglin does, they give you like bad cards. They give you a bad starting deck to begin with, right? So they give you just stones that you throw down. You should play Peglin. Peglin is such a good example of like an indie roguelike deck builder if you have not played it. Actually, let's go look at Peglin. And let's maybe even just play Peglin so you understand. I'm going to play it just a little bit of Peglin so you understand like kind of where I'm getting the inspiration from. Also just because it's like a kick-ass game and I like it. Okay. Peglin. Peglin update queued. I don't want to update. I just want to play my game. Okay. All right. So I'll end the stream just by playing Peglin because I want to show you just like where the inspirations come from. I guess instead of just talking about the games, I kind of want to like maybe do like a little bit of a dive into the design aspects of the game. So this is Peglin. Peglin was inspired by another game called Peggle, which is sort of like a breakout game where you get to choose you'll see. But this is basically taking Breakout but adding roguelike deck builder elements to it. So it's roguelike deck builder Breakout, kinda. And there's like a whole RPG kind of fighting thing to it as well. Okay, so all this stuff is like you can start your run with some different options, different difficulty. This is all difficulty. I don't want to modify that. I'm just going to play a standard game. Okay, so I get my relics that I get to choose from. Peglin has this concept of relics, which kind of affect the global state of the game, which is kind of cool. So we got the board will contain an additional reef. You'll see what these things are. I'll just pick this one. Orb and Relic Battle Rewards contain an additional option to choose from. Okay, so we'll pick that one. So this kind of board that you see is very standard in a roguelike deck builder. It's the it's like showing the different choices that you can pick, showing the map, the different events that can happen. Okay. Peglin has the concept of a deck, but it's not a card deck, right? So Peglin is called a roguelike deck builder, but the deck that you're building is actually a deck of different balls that you get to shoot down this kind of breakout sort of thing, or it's kind of like pinball too. So this is your deck, right? And then as I notice that I kind of start out with a crappy deck, right? And that's by design. So because what Peglin wants you to do is over time they want you to swap out these crappy like stones with more powerful balls that synergize with each other, right? So I'll just drop one of these just so you can see kind of the magic of this. This game, by the way, did very, very well, really well. It did like I know it's at least $1 million game. So just think about that, right? Indie developer, like it's a bit of a darling, and it's just a fun game. It's actually like one of my favorite new games to play. So I'm going to hit that. That gives me a critical hit. So there's also these RPG elements that kind of work well with the game. Okay, so now that's going to blow up. And wow, actually I had a really good shot there. Okay, so now the things that I did, right, in this like pebble board, in this kind of breakout board, they affect the battle that's going on up there. So the more that I can get like critical hits, or I can blow up these bombs, right? Then the more damage that I do to the guys that I'm fighting. So this ball here, the Dag Orb, it's got a weak regular damage, but it does massive damage on a critical hit. And so a critical hit is when you hit one of these things. So if I do this, then I get a critical hit, and now I'm getting like 14 damage, 25, 48. Okay, some bombs, 63, like crazy amounts of damage. Oh, and I just refreshed my board. So now I'm going to throw a bomb, and then I'm going to throw a huge dagger that does like 98 damage, right? But these ped balls, they kind of suck, right? No special effects. So just 2 and 3, they suck. So as we're playing the game, kind of what we want to do is figure out a way that we can either swap out these ped balls with something else that's much better, right? That gives us more of a bit of a synergy of like combining multipliers, or B, at the very least, add new balls to this deck so that overall the probability is more goes more in the direction of the new stuff that we put in versus these pebbles, which are kind of, they might always have to be in there, but at the very least, if we can just add kind of more to sort of like push the probability in a better direction, then that kind of deck building, right, makes us more likely to win the game, right? So that's kind of what we want. But yeah, so I'll just play with a regular ball. Obviously just had a crappy one, but you see. So what I'm gonna try and do is, like, I really want to get these bombs kind of, because they're awesome. Yeah, that sucked. All right. So I've got this ped ball. I don't want, the thing is I don't want to refresh, but maybe if I do, then I can get the, I don't know. I'll try this, I guess. There we go. Critical hit. That still sucked. So if those guys get too close to me, then they'll start attacking me and I'll lose health. I have a health bar right here, right? So that's kind of how that part works. What I really want to do is I just want to get the bombs. So I'm just going to try and do that, because the bombs do like area of effect damage. They like completely destroy. So there we go. Please. Yes, I got the bomb. Got the critical hit. This will work. So I'm going to throw a bomb that does 50 damage, and then I'll hit him, and then I'll do like the rest. Okay. So this here is the reward screen. This is kind of what my game will show after a defense wave, right? And so what I want to show you is, okay, my game had 3 choices. Peglin, well, because of my relic, I have an extra choice, but ordinarily Peglin would give you like 4 of these. So each of these, I can spend gold. I got the gold by breaking open some of the things have coins in them. Actually, this thing has coin. So when you break these, you get gold, because that's got like little coins in it. So you get coins from that, and then that adds to your gold, and then I can spend it in this shop. And I can spend it on all kinds of things. This is a multi-ball. So multi-ball splits into 2 when hitting a peg. So each level allows multiple multi-balls to split an additional time. So maybe I build an entire deck that's, the whole focus is just multi-balls, right? This is a ball lightning. Okay, zaps an additional nearby every bounce. Can target any enemy on critical attack. This one is a little bit more of a long play. Whenever I hit a peg, then the damage that it does on the next round through increases by 2. So if I have an entire deck filled with these, then the damage just keeps going up and up and up as you go through. So early game damage would be low, but late game damage would be high. This is a new one I haven't seen. Dewball doubles the amount of spinfection. So okay, so this is kind of like a poison effect. Doubles the amount of spinfection on the enemy. Can target any enemy. So they lose like 10x HP. This one's just a really bouncy ball, right? So maybe the one that I would pick is this one here, right? And now my deck. So I'm going to continue on to the next one. So I get to choose. I tend to prefer just to like fight guys, but it's up to you. You get to choose where you're going on this thing. This map is super common to the roguelike deck builder genre, very common. Okay, so now I've like refreshed. Now what you'll notice is I've got this deck here, right? But I've got an extra one here. So I didn't remove anything, I added to my deck, right? So now as I'm kind of going through, my options are these balls here, and then I get this one at the very end. That's my multi-ball. So I'll just play up to the point where we get the multi-ball just so you can see. And then it's probably time to like do something else. So did you notice how I got the coin there? Okay. So I'm just really trying to get the bombs because that's where the real power is. I might end up like just winning before I ever get to my multi-ball. Or maybe I'll take damage or something. So again, my attacks kind of suck because I just have like the regular ball, right? I don't have anything like super special here. Okay. I threw a bomb. That's going to help out a lot. Yeah, if I get another bomb, basically everything on the screen is going to die. Hit that. So whatever I'm doing is going to get a critical hit, and it's going to be like a really big critical hit. Okay, so basically everything's going to die. So that was actually well played. Throw a bomb. Nothing's left. Okay. On to the next one. And I have 46 gold now again that I can kind of keep building onto this. I will upgrade this thing so I can upgrade it now. It's got more multi-ball levels. So that's kind of the thing I prefer to do. Maybe I'll go here just to show you like sometimes there's events in this game that also influence how your deck works. So, okay, find another surveying there. Okay, yeah. Okay, great. Actually, this is one thing I wanted to mention how a lot of roguelike deck builders work. So I can upgrade an orb here. I can also remove an orb. Remember how I said my deck is actually all of these orbs? Well, if I just remove this one, then now I've kind of skewed my probability more in the direction of my better balls that I can put into the breakout thing. So now when I see this, I have one fewer, and actually it seems like it perfectly randomly shuffled those, right? So it took among those, it shuffled all of them together, and now I got a completely new shuffle. And because this one used to be at the bottom, now it's kind of in the second position, right? So actually I'll play just a little bit more, mainly because it's like a really addictive game. But I very much enjoy it. Okay. And see what's great is like, like the art on this game is good, right? It's good art, but it's just pixel art. And like pixel art is kind of hard to do, but this isn't a game that like where the art is the main thing, right? The thing that's great about this game is just it's got awesome gameplay. It's got a lot of these like roguelike deck builder elements. It's just really fun. I was playing a lot of games last weekend, and this one actually of all of the ones I played kind of stood out the most. I had a really good time playing it. I don't know. Okay, so here's my multi-ball, right? So this is going to split when it hits a thing, and then it can split in two, I think. So I've got one level of multi-ball. I don't know when it splits next, but so that was pretty powerful because I upgraded it, and now it's going to do like insane amounts of damage, right? So that's my multi-ball. I'm going to quit because if I keep playing, I'm just going to be like, too into it. So it's a good game. I like it. All right. So to recap, I'm going to have to work through how it is that I come up, how it is that I shuffle the deck, right? Because as you add more cards in, I'm going to have to, basically once you use up all the cards, I'm going to have to shuffle all of that so you don't get the exactly the same ones over and over again. So that's just another form of random generation. And that'll be fine. I think I kind of want it to be like Peglin, right? So there'll be the ability to add cards to your deck, and then there'll also be the ability to take them away. So maybe there were some cards that you got early on that you thought were valuable, but then later on in the game not as valuable as you would like. And mostly you're using the cards to build, right? They are structures that you put down. So the cards are for building turrets. There might be other kinds of cards, but the main thing you're doing with them is you're building, right? So maybe there's like cards that like allow you to upgrade turrets or like other actions that are related to building, but all of the cards, I'm kind of trying to draw a contrast between Peglin, because in Peglin, the cards really are like for attacking. They are for they're the balls that are used in this kind of breakout style game, right? And there's just it's just very different. What you have to like think about what their qualities and characteristics are. I don't know of any kind of game where the cards are buildings, which makes this game kind of weird in a sense. I guess maybe one that I'm thinking of would be like terraformers. Actually, I could go into playing that game, but I've already played one game on stream today, so maybe I will show some of the inspiration from terraformers next. But that's a game where I think the creator of that game considers it to be kind of a roguelike. And it does have cards, and the cards are used for building. So actually, that game is a good one to look at in terms of thinking about some of the inspirations for this game, right? Just looking at like what kinds of decisions did they make, why might they have made those decisions as a designer. So I might take a look at that game on the next stream. But that's just to kind of just show you where we are. We're now at the place where we're figuring out how the other deck building, the card deck building, is really going to work, because we've solved some of those core design problems there, which is it's pretty exciting. So I'm going to stop for now, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. All right. Have a good afternoon. It's been fun.